Can we please get a factory reset on 2025? I don't think my heart can take anymore. Recently it was Diane Keaton. Today it's D'Angelo. And that is going to hurt me for a long while. And here's why. All right, you white motherfuckers, all eyes on me. This is the I Refuse podcast. I'm Mr. Fox, the I Refuse podcast. I know it's been a while since I gave you some fresh content, but lately I've only been doing these kind of videos when something of impact or somebody of impact is no longer with us or something happens. And I felt inspired today to do a fresh video for you guys because the passing of D'Angelo, aka Michael Archer Sr., is sad on so many levels. Of course, by the time you get to this video, the news would have probably gotten to you that D'Angelo passed away earlier today after a private, courageous battle with pancreatic cancer at a really young age. I don't even believe he was in his mid-50s yet. The impact and the legacy of D'Angelo is one that is hard to put into words because D'Angelo happened at a time when things were still, R&B and soul music was still in a traditional phase, but also kind of turning by way of, New Jack and going kind of back into a classic throwback kind of thing. While it's been said many, many times over that D'Angelo is the father of neo soul and Erykah Badu is the godmother of the queen of neo soul, I myself, Mr. Fox, the I Refuse podcast, is one that lives with context and with that some intrusive thoughts and some unpopular opinions. The neo-soul movement, as we've been calling it since the early 90s, pretty much got kicked off by Michelle and Dale Cello. That's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. But what set D'Angelo apart from his peers at the time was that not only was he a vocalist and a producer and a songwriter, he was actually also a musician. And I believe not only of one particular instrument, but several. And my first recollection of D'Angelo was You Will Know by Black Men United, which I believe he wrote and also produced. I'm not entirely sure, but I do remember in the early 90s at the American Music Awards, and the video is available on YouTube, he is performing the piano work or the keyboard work while Black Men United are singing the song live. Black Men United, I remember the song first. I wasn't old enough to see the movie Jason's Lyric, but that was definitely, it almost seems like a fever dream. Because you had various male artists coming together to sing quite beautifully in harmony about loss, grief, redemption, the point of realization that there's more out there. And you had in Black Men United, which was essentially a collective of artists, it wasn't like an official group, There was Usher, Tony, Aaron Hall, R. Kelly. I believe Jodeci was in that. Boyz II Men was in that, I believe. Raphael Sadiq, Tevin Campbell, Albie Shore, I believe. Gerald Levert, I think while he was still a Levert. Rude Boys, I think, was in that. Um, Stokely from Mint Condition. Who else was in that? Either Intro or Ideal. But definitely, a moment in time in the early 90s. And fast forward a couple of years, he drops Brown Sugar. Now, at the time when Brown Sugar came out, of course, this predated our introduction to Maxwell, Lauryn Hill's solo effort, um, the Fugees, and even before Erykah Badu. But it happened at a time where we had not heard a more contemporary revisit of the likes of almost like a hybrid of, the Marvin Gaye, Billy Paul era with a little bit of Sam Cooke, but also there was a thread of spirituality, sensuality, and some laid back grooves to it. Brown Sugar, the album, D'Angelo was definitely the lead throughout all of that, with some assistance from Raphael Sadiq and I believe Questlove, I think. But I definitely believe the same collective that was behind Erykah Badu's second album, some Uncommon Stuff, were some of the folks behind D'Angelo's first album. It had Brown Sugar on there, Jones in My Bones. He did a cover of the Smokey Robinson song Cruising. There's Higher, there's Lady, a personal favorite of mine. Shit Damn Motherfucker. Let's see what else is on there. Dreamy Eyes of Mine. And that's all we talked about for about a good 2 years. And not only with that album did the music stand out, but D'Angelo definitely stood out aesthetically. And unbeknownst to him, or maybe beknownst to him, he was looked at as a sex symbol. And we were in our horny phases then. It started to overshadow the music. Of course, 3 or 4 years had passed before we got Voodoo, which in my opinion was worlds beyond an improvement over his first album. But there was definitely a monumental shift with not only the music, but the overshadowing of its artistic merit. You had the first single that came out with the music video was Untitled How Does It Feel? And yes, I, like some of y'all, called up to the television screen to look down to look down at the bottom to see if we could see anything. And it definitely shook the table. The music video is essentially D'Angelo's naked body, of course, not fully in the camera, standing on a turnstile or a swivel of some kind in front of a black background, directed by Billy Woodruff, who in my opinion is not discussed enough when it comes to music video directors. As he's singing the song, Of course, the album version's like 7 minutes long, but the single versions are roughly 4.5 minutes long. And you get to see all the beauty. Unfortunately, as time went on, as he was going on tour and doing live performances and stuff, he started to get objectified. And it got worse as time went on. People didn't pay those crazy ticket prices to listen to the music and take in the experience, because Voodoo itself, from beginning to end, is an experience. Up until that time, I don't think I'd ever heard an album as rich, as cohesive, and as multi-layered as Voodoo. And usually at that time, R&B acts and music acts were on a 2-year timetable. Put out an album, let's say in 96. By 98, the next one's coming out. By 2000, the next one's coming out. But the great thing about neo soul artists is that they used live musicians. This wasn't a producer behind the soundboard making sounds on a soundboard or a mixer or anything, and that was the music. No, they actually had lead guitar, bass guitars, drummers, flutists if it needs one, like different kinds of musicians on different instruments playing the music. Hence why there was probably a 5-year gap between albums. Another thing, and I said that specifically to dispel, another thing that people were saying about D'Angelo is that this motherfucker don't like to work. It's so unfortunate because in D'Angelo's case, you are dealing with two opinions that are superficial in nature. People are so used to an album coming out like clockwork from an artist. Well, at that time, like I said, every 2 years. But, with Maxwell and D'Angelo, they took their time with albums. Jill Scott did the same thing. Erykah Badu did the same thing. And that's because they had actual musicians doing the music. But also, I believe in D'Angelo's case, the label, just like they were doing with Maxwell, were holding their shit back. So for D'Angelo to have that opinion placed upon him that he didn't want to work, and this is aside from the assessment that you could barely understand what this motherfucker is saying, because he would always, I believe, to preserve his voice, sing in a particular way that reminded a lot of people of Prince. So once it got to be too much, the sex idol, the objectification of him, superseding the music and his sensitivity as an artist, it really got to him. And we didn't get another album for another 14 years. And in that time between, the conclusion of the Voodoo era and Black Messiah, he was eventually coming back a little bit, doing guest spots, doing impromptu stuff, and looking dramatically different. I mean, he's still the same, but he didn't have the body. And of course, that came with its own set of stuff. You know, a lot of us matured out of that sex craze era and fast ass era of the 90s and the 2000s. You know, I guess to the positive and the detriment, have arrived to this era right now where it's like everything is just about an issue. You know, we're even more sensitive. We're quick to label, you know, things as an ism or an ist because it's offensive to us. Um, but not that long ago, when the shoe was on the other foot and it was the man that was the target of a form of misogyny, nobody was thinking about the mental illness and, you know, the impact it has on a person's psyche. And nobody had the patience or the time to give D'Angelo the space to figure things out. And nobody thought, you know, maybe I should just come to the House of Blues to listen to the music and not ask him at every tour stop to take his clothes off. And maybe, you know, Michael Archer Sr. didn't think about it at the time because he probably was most likely in it for the music. And for better or worse, you know, D'Angelo and Angie Stone, when I think of their life since their passing, they were on the receiving end of a lot of colorism, misogyny, fat shaming, fat phobia, at a time that, at its peak, a lot of us were competing for the white gaze and for Eurocentric standards. Not realizing that not that long ago we were minding our business when we were being targeted by them. Yet there it was in the 90s, in the 2000s, we were measuring Angie Stone by those standards to the point that we were shocked that she was able to snag D'Angelo. Not realizing that was a real thing. And just like I said in the video I did talking about Angie Stone's life, I'm sure in D'Angelo's life, you know, the people around him got in the way. Thus, their situation and relationship professionally dissolved. And I don't think a lot of people were willing to hold his feet to the fire, because when you're that successful, nobody's telling you no. The idea is the people around you will say anything to you that's always going to be in their favor. So I can only imagine during D'Angelo's life, during that time, you have women at your shows not there for the music, but for a strip show. You have the record label most likely pressuring you to do a follow-up immediately. Possibly not giving you the space or the grace to get inspiration, you, like so many other great talents, are faced with writer's block on a cycle. And you're dealing with some personal turmoil. When Black Messiah came out, it had been a good 14 years since we had heard from D'Angelo. And he, not for nothing, the stuff that he did put out and the lesser known stuff was put together on a greatest hits to kind of remind people of a time that, we were blessed. But we didn't know. We were like, oh shit, like this kind of came out of nowhere. And D'Angelo was back. It's Black Messiah was definitely an album that came out was as a reflection of the times. We were a couple years into the Black Lives Matters movement, whether we want to believe it or not. And this, when Black Messiah came out, Mike Brown lost his life. Trayvon Martin lost his life. I believe Sandra Bland had lost her life around that time. And a lot of the songs on that album definitely was inspired by that 2 or 3 years span. And that album was very, very necessary in that it centered Black existence around injustice. How history just keeps repeating itself. And like his previous offerings, the album had a spiritual thread through it, and dare I say it, a religious thread as well. It was definitely about a moment of salvation and peace and centering oneself back to a place of oneness. I don't think, like Angie Stone, I don't think the world truly appreciated D'Angelo enough. And there's probably still some fast ass older women out here, just like they were fast in the 20s for D'Angelo. Just as I remember him, I can't help but remember the objectification that he had to go through when all that man wanted to do was perform, write, make music. And that's what he gave us across 3 albums, a live album, a greatest hits, a couple of features, duets. When you're that good, you don't want to oversaturate. When you are a real musician, which is rare these days. But not only that, a vocalist. D'Angelo was definitely at the top, cream of the crop. It would be, I would be remiss to do this video and not mention how I hear D'Angelo and Luke, what's his name? Luke James, Lucky Day, Moses Sumney, the internet, Steve Lacy, who else? Um, Bilal. I would say Bilal is probably the closest musical descendant. Um, and I always heard Prince and D'Angelo, but when we're talking about, alternative R&B, as it's called these days, and the singer-songwriter musicians, particularly the male ones that are out here, like I can't help but hear D'Angelo in some of them. And dare I say, in some of the women too. Ari Lennox, Jasmine Sullivan. Who else? Hmm. Thames, even. It, this this one sucks. D'Angelo's definitely had an impact and influence on me as a person. When you see D'Angelo, and as I've seen D'Angelo growing up, he didn't look like. First of all, he didn't look anything like he sounded. He looked like somebody that I grew up with, and he definitely defied expectations and assumptions. The look isn't everything. And when we look back on how it's even more on the forefront in music and in stage shows and live performances and put upon these artists by the label and the industry, sex, sexiness, suggestive lyrics, innuendo. D'Angelo definitely crafted something that was, like I said, spiritual and sensual, um, but not, vulgar or crass or tasteless. Definitely across those three albums, I would say you got to see the range of a black man and an artist that you probably won't get ever again in this lifetime. He definitely, along with Erica Badu and Maxwell and Lauryn Hill, turned the movement into an international force. But I still say Michelle and Cello is the queen of neo soul who kicked all that off with her first album, Plantation Lullabies. Um, Rest in peace, D'Angelo. Passed away after a lengthy private battle with pancreatic cancer. Um, I really hate the industry and people's hormones to drive that man to mental and emotional breakdowns and alcoholism, allegedly, and a long period of time of crashing out, so to speak. It's not easy. Being number one is not easy. Being number one in that damn fine, damn sure ain't easy. And I blame y'all. And my heart goes out to his son, who has lost both parents in less than 6 months. Lost his mom not even 6 months ago. and now he lost his father. I'm gonna get up out of here and continue my D'Angelo listening music. D'Angelo Day. I've already gone through Brown Sugar, flawless album, 10 out of 10, no notes. Voodoo, 5 stars, no skips on that album whatsoever. Um, Voodoo, the album, my favorites, Player, Left and Right, Devil's Pie, Send It On, Chicken Grease, Feel Like Making Love, which is a cover of a Roberta Flack song. Africa, Untitled How Does It Feel? That's literally like more than half the album. Black Messiah. Ooh. Let's see. Black Messiah. It's been a minute. I'm gonna go back to that album. I would have never thought in the 11 years since Black Messiah that we would be here, but this is where we are. But I do remember when Black Messiah first came out, I played the hell out of what was the name of that song? Shit. All we wanted was a chance to talk. Instead we got outlined in. Instead we got outlined in chalk. Black? No. D'Angelo and the Vanguard, which I think was like a group with him in it. That was the name of the act. Damn. Oh. I played that song out so much because it was so vital, necessary, and representative of the times at that time. Literally, when we were being shot down in the middle of the street and ended up dead in jail after a routine traffic stop. Yeah, this very, very sad. But yes, rest in peace, D'Angelo. Gonna, like I said, go back, continue my D'Angelo day of music. My favorite D'Angelo songs. That man could do a cover like nobody else. Your Precious Love with Erykah Badu. That was cute. She's Always in My Hair. Lady, Devil's Pie, Left and Right. Brown Sugar. Lady, the remix with AZ. Let's see. Could it be you were the best thing I ever saw? Or is my imagination moving too far? Ooh, baby. Love that song. What else? And there are a couple of songs on Black Messiah that are not coming to me. But I love the song with him and Raphael Sadiq called Be Here. And of course, You Will Know by Black Men United. And his duet with Lauryn Hill, Nothing Even Matters. Baby, I'm going to play that when I get off of here. But rest in peace to D'Angelo. I boo all of y'all that objectified that man in the 90s and the 2000s. Man out here trying to perform real live music, and y'all talking about take your shirt off. What are you fast ass women? Like, I don't think a lot of people, and this is a conversation y'all should be having. I don't think a lot of people understand the stress and strain you put on people when you lean very heavy into objectifying them. There will never be another like D'Angelo. There'll probably most likely never be another artist that did it in that way. I Miss Fox, the RFU's podcast. Follow, subscribe to the podcast wherever you see us. Usual Suspects Pod, the RFU's podcast YouTube channel, the Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky. Link in the bio. Get into it. Original Black content creation. Every week, every month, every year. Season 7 of the RFU's podcast is alive and well. Season 7, episode 7 just dropped a couple days ago. Well, actually yesterday. The episode's called Ready to Die. Get into that. I'm sure Abstract and I will be recording this week. So much has happened since the last episode. Season 2, Usual Suspects podcast, still alive and running. So yeah, follow, subscribe, some real shit. RFU's podcast. I'm Mr. Fox. Catch y'all later. Peace. Fendi, like the bag. This is the I Refuse.